Yo YouTube, GK's back, but this time with Devil May Cry 5. I'm a longtime fan of the series and I've always, loved its charm, but it's not about me, it's about what those critics said. Heather Alexandria of Kotaku, hope I pronounced that right, made a lot of cool points in a longer review. A lot of the reviews for this game were really long, so bear that in mind, and a lot of them do contain a lot of spoilers. So be warned about that, just to start. But first, let's pull a quote from her and just kind of go off of that. When I play as these characters, I understand exactly the type of people they are. She's kind of talking about that their fighting styles and all the little quirks that they have really get you to understand who they are. I'm thinking of her speaking from the perspective that you've never played a Devil May Cry game in this quote, not necessarily. I think that's supposed to shine here. And it's really nice because you do get that feel. So it was a good, valid point I wanted to bring up for her. But next, she kind of like recaps it. I wanted to show that off before we get to some other quotes. And as you can see, she played the game on normal difficulty in around 14 hours. That's a good timestamp. And repeated a lot of levels to get higher ranks. That was something I didn't do personally. And some of the other reviewers, you'll see how they handled the replayability value of DMC5. What she disliked was the story doesn't really take off until the very end of some generic environments in the middle segments. That's not too bad of a dislike, in terms of games. It wasn't too harsh or too crazy specific. What she liked was the fantastic combat, stylish cutscenes. Each playable character feels unique. Also, it's just fucking fun, to quote Heather here. And overall, our essay is really positive. I'm not sure if you got that sentiment with your own prior knowledge, but so I wanted to highlight some things that were maybe not so stellar here. And while Devil May Cry 5 doesn't completely redefine the series, it hones the gameplay to a sharp edge that will please diehards and newbies alike. So this is a type of thing I saw a lot with the Devil May Cry reviews. It's a double-edged sword. You hit them with a diss and a compliment, and you don't really know what to do with that. The best thing I can equate it to was the Eminem and MGK beef, where if you heard it, you know it, you get the reference. If not, I just have to move on. So another quote by Alexandria is, "Combat is intuitive and the characters are clearly defined, but the surrounding pieces that make the experience stumble, if only slightly. The core gameplay is wonderful, but it's in service of a plot that is fractured and honestly makes little sense, even to a fan of the series like me." So here we get the quick fact that she is a fan of the series. So I don't know what that means. What it means to me is I'm a fan of DMC, so I played them all. So I'm assuming also that Heather has played them all. So it makes that first quote kind of show that it was written for someone who hadn't played it in that initial foray. But what's interesting here is that makes the experience stumble, if only slightly. There's not many mentionings of this stumble because, like I said, that double-edged sword comes out. It's always the good and the bad, and you get a lot of not middle reviews in terms of grades or how they talk of it, but just kind of leaving the real meat of the negative out of the sentiment, the heart of it. So we're playing a lot of that with the Devil May Cry reviews, and that kind of duality is going to show up a lot, but the overwhelming grades, everything's kind of high, spoiler alert. So we'll just keep moving on. I want you to keep those things in mind as we look at the other reviews, but this was a great review. And again, if you really just want a recap of the story, a lot of it, and some cool moments, check out her review. Michelle Saltman of IGN, I really hope I pronounced that one right, has one of the most glaring microtransaction blurbs in his review that really goes unnoticed by the other reviewers of the game, so I give them a lot of credit for mentioning these microtransactions and how bad it actually is. But however, let's hear what he actually says, like in terms of the quote. And to highlight here, that's always a bad look in reference to the microtransaction system. That being said, the red orb cost for just about every upgrade and technique feels appropriately priced. And they never felt any kind of need or desire to drop real cash on red orbs, nor did they feel like they had to farm them in-game. I felt like it would have had to have been an extreme farm to try to get near 75% of all of the abilities due to the red orbs. And that's just my opinion personally. You really have to farm them to get most of them. I didn't do that. That's just my opinion right there. And just showing you his quote is that even though he slanders the microtransactions because they were off kilter upon release, especially, and they did cause like a stir. Because RPGs and microtransactions are never ever a good thing. It should never really be excused. I didn't use any. You don't need to, because quite frankly the game's kind of easy. And that's his next point here. I'll read that. Though the Devil May Cry games have a bit of reputation for being difficult on its default settings, DMC5 isn't terribly hard. In fact, it's actually quite forgiving if all you want to do is survive the ordeal. I myself was a little disappointed at how easy the game was, and I'm a returning player. I haven't played DMC in a long time. However, I know the game, and it was very easy. It was very catered to a newer audience, yet remaining nostalgia filled for the longtime fans. But kind of moving on, it should be said that Devil May Cry 5 looks and sounds stellar. Style and personality ooze out of every animation, whether it's Nero's wild engine-powered sword attacks that send him flying, Dante's smug teasing on the various bosses, or V's subtle mannerisms that just add to his mystique. This is true, and this is a sentiment that we got a lot so far, and we'll get some more of. But that's like the real positive here. The negative, we'll read another negative thing, and you're kind of going to see a pattern here about what I'm trying to relay about this Devil May Cry review. Level design is more linear and much less puzzle-heavy related to previous Devil May Cry games, which I appreciated, as it kept the brisk pace up and put more of an emphasis on skill-based combat challenges. Skill-based, there's underlined it in red. I'm assuming you can go look it up. But yes, there is a curve to learning a Devil May Cry game and going for cool and style. However, I did think the game lacked something, and if not just one thing, multiple things. And this linear level design and less puzzles, while you might feel frustrated from a PlayStation 2 era puzzle, a puzzle can be done now, and it, could be revolutionary. Just like Senua's Sacrifice or Senua's Blade, that $30, $40 game that came out, like they did puzzles right. So you're not going to convince me that puzzles are always bad. And there was something left to be desired about Devil May Cry. However, the IGN review is totally contradictory to the all the negatives about the game, and it teeters at a 9.5 amazing. So just to put that in perspective, Days Gone got an okay as their word to describe the game. So a 9.5 from them, and we'll keep it moving to Geoffrey Park in a Polygon. We have a title here that really kind of sets the tone for who the audience is of this particular review. Even newcomers will find something to enjoy in Devil May Cry 5 if they meet the heavy metal action game on its own terms. We hear this a lot about players having to meet Devil May Cry and play it its specific way, and there's no other really way to enjoy it until you fully immerse in that. He comes with this rule of cool, which makes sense for the Devil May Cry game, and says he fought against this approach for hours because he kept forgetting that nothing is more important than being cool. To a newcomer, Devil May Cry plays like an over-the-shoulder hack-and-slash game, but it's really not, but it really is. So that's a weird fine line there. But he's talking about how he's trying to get into Devil May Cry mode, so to speak. But buying into that rule, he also goes on to say that the series is built on impenetrable lore, which lies in the uncomfortable space between baffling and inconsequential. He says he has no other way to understand what's going on unless he uses fan wikis. I find this totally inaccurate because at the beginning of the game, you can actually watch a history AMA cutscene for quite a while, like Kingdom Hearts did and other games do, to catch you up on a story. And I thought that was really well done and really nice to really get people familiar again with the characters and the overall story. What I enjoyed most about the game was the story, but it's not about me right now. He says the story is inconsequential and baffling. Yet the review is largely positive, as we've kind of seen throughout. Devil May Cry 5 is truly madly deeply itself. I had a lot of issues with this quote here because we kind of get the idea that this person is new to the game, or at least writing to the audience of someone being new, and they're trying to reassure someone that Devil May Cry is just itself. Like, it is DMC. It's everything that Devil May Cry ever was, ever is, and ever will be, really, is Devil May Cry 5. And I just kind of think that to be true, madly is a weird word there. It's negative in this case, the way I took it. But later on in that quote, and Devil May Cry 5 is fun. It is fun. It's just nice to hear it so plain and simple. So I really thought of showing both sides of the Polygon review and really show the battle and conflict the gamer had and the reviewer had with the game, and yet how they presented the information was just a little confusing. Are you actually new to the game? Do you actually know the world? But if you don't, how can you make the claim that it's wildly, madly itself? But moving on, we'll go to Games Radar and we'll end it all with Metacritic. So Oscar Taylor Kent of Games Radar writes that Devil May Cry 5 review, a wild, exhilarating ride from start to finish. So we can only imagine what kind of actual score the game will be getting, but let's get into some of the details that I really liked about this review. It hit on a lot of cool points, a lot of different ones that really show this reviewer's flair. And some of the things I agree with and some things I don't, as per usual. It's V that offers the freshest gameplay for the series, and understandably would make veterans the most hesitant. Instead of getting involved in the action himself, he summons demons to do the dirty work, so on and so on. I found V to be very enjoyable and really the freshest part of the gameplay. It wasn't anything else. It was the character of V that was very appealing. It brought something new. It's about the only thing new to the game was that singular character, which is kind of odd to say. One thing I like about Games Radar is that they jump right into their pros and cons list right at the top. So we'll check out the pros and cons. Numerically, they're even at 3 and 3. The pros: slick controls, gorgeous aesthetics. The controls, I'm assuming, really lean towards battle. Combat is so satisfying you'll never want to stop playing. High skill ceiling with excellent newcomer options. So really all of these kind of center around battle, because traversing the world itself, there's very little platforming, and there's very little else. It's very linear, as we kind of heard, and these aren't these opinions, these are kind of facts here. The cons: could have used more missions per character. Ending feels a bit rushed, and mostly unobtrusive story that may confuse the unfamiliar. These seem like glaring negatives to me. More missions, meaning the game's kind of short. Endings feel a bit rushed. I didn't necessarily feel that way because I kind of expected what I was going to get out of Devil May Cry, to be quite honest. And the story that may confuse the unfamiliar. So we have the perspective here that this person knows of the story at the very least and can understand how it could be confusing to somebody new to the series. But moving on, but for all the bright sparks, spurts of blood, raging fires, and more action hitting the screen at once, all gloriously rendered in Capcom's own Resident Evil 7 engine, it's always the character you're controlling that's your real focus. Brings up a cool point here. It is the same engine, and everyone talks about the graphics and some of the aesthetics. We heard something about the aesthetics, about the vines, and they should be flowers. I don't know if I maybe explicitly mentioned it, but it was definitely in one of the reviews that someone had said that they would have preferred something a little more vibrant. However, the point here is that it is the same engine, and the graphics, to be honest, are in 2019 are to be expected. I'll talk about why maybe this game jumped those expectations for people, but for right now, just pointing out the fact that they are the same engines is noteworthy. Even on easier difficulties, the game retains a reasonable amount of challenge and plenty of options to feel like you're overcoming them with stylish scores without being too unforgiving. Here again was just to reinforce the point that the game is very forgiving. Though this reviewer seems to add a little more challenge to it, and it sounded a little easier in other reviews or a little harder. For me, we already kind of know that the game was kind of easy. That also means nothing really overstays its welcome. The appeal is, as always with Devil May Cry, on replaying for more stylish scores to challenge higher difficulties and find all the hidden orbs and secret missions. Suffice it to say, these secret missions are not exactly the greatest thing, like a Kingdom Hearts secret boss, secret ending type of mission. They're really nominal. And again, we have the replayability factor here. I wanted to show again that, yes, a lot of people are talking about replaying for higher scores. But I don't know about you, but when I'm not, in class, I don't want to get tested all the time on every little thing. And I understand that could be Capcom's way, but we'll just get onto that later. Their final verdict is a 4.5 out of 5. Capcom has done it again, re-energizing a classic series like never before and pushing the genre forward in a fresh way. It looks better than ever, plays better than ever. It's Devil May Cry better than ever. It's odd that the phrases here push the genre forward when really nothing in the game pushed the genre forward besides the controls and movement and graphics. Nothing story-wise. If anything, the ending isn't really hopeful to Dante fans at all, honestly. And I just kind of think that the graphics is what caught everybody by surprise. Now, for one of the most honest places you could go, yet one of the most unreliable places, Metacritic. Metacritic, as you know, doesn't exactly have a exact review by one person. It does have a summary, but we don't do summaries. So the Metacritic score is an 89 out of 100. The user score is an 8.7 out of 10. This is odd. Sometimes, usually the user score would be higher for a game than the critic score. So we take a scan of the page, and there's really a lot of green I saw when I first checked the page out. A cool thing about Metacritic is they show you a little tally mark of all the reviews in. So at the time, while recording this video, I took a screenshot of that, and I have it up there so you can see. Mostly positive reviews. There are 0 negative reviews from the critics. Not one negative review. There's only 2 mixed reviews and 40 positive. From the users, 135 positive, 12 mixed, and 12 negative. Even though those ratios seem comparable, the user review based on, the number being over 100 is just astounding. And to try to make sense of this, we really have to look at people's reviews. So we'll start off. Twin Dennis. The game is really amazing. Gameplay is truly unique and superior from its predecessors, along with great new additions that make the ... It keeps going because you can expand their views. I'm trying to keep it short, so I read their first tagline that really everybody sees. Twin Dennis, it is superior in form and function and aesthetic, but in terms of everything else that makes a game, it's not exactly that, in my opinion. Ignore78 said, amazing graphics, but that's it. The game is so boring and repetitive. How can this game get so high scores is beyond me. And I can understand what Ignore78 is saying here. It's not that I found the game boring, but replaying missions, I don't exactly like to do that, especially when the reward is a item that you've capped off because of microtransactions, if that kind of makes sense to everybody out there. So I wanted to show you guys that, and you know what time it is. It's time. 89 critic score and its 8.7 user score were averaged together to get Metacritic's total score at an 88. Games Radar 4.5 gets rounded up on a scale of 100 to a 95. IGN's 9.5 gets averages to a 90 out of 100. We're always using a scale of 100. Polygon and Kotaku, as usual, they do not give a numerical score. So we go by the feel of their essay and do take averages from the scores that were already numerical from the reviewers. So since they were both really positive, didn't really harp on the negatives too much that would infect a numerical score, they're both going to get the average score of our two highest scores, so 95 and 90. Those two were tallied together and got the average for both Polygon and Kotaku at a 92.5. Total score, our total average for Devil May Cry 5 at a 91.6. Now, do I feel that's high? Yeah, I do feel that's high. I'm sure you got that sentiment throughout this video. And not because I dislike the game. I really enjoyed this game, but I think a few factors were taken into that made the scores go a lot higher, and people didn't really write about the negatives. One, because it's the 5th entry in a series, and writing about the negatives of something is hard if you don't really know the world that is Devil May Cry. We got that idea a lot from a lot of the reviewers. Also, that it's a Capcom game and they're on the rise right now, especially with Resident Evil. But one of the things that got me into Resident Evil, which I wasn't previously a fan of, was their newest entry, standalone 7, that was just amazing. The potential there, that I was like, okay, Capcom's kind of back here in a big way. That wasn't what they did with Devil May Cry or the newest Resident Evil remake. So I think those were really weighted heavily in the reviews. As a fan, I did enjoy the high graphics and high fidelity and movement and combat greatly, but it was an easy game to me, I thought. And the reviewers did mention that it was an easy game, or forgiving is the word they used. I got the tone that they liked that system a little bit more than I did because of reviews like for Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which I think I'm going to be doing next. If Devil May Cry had ramped the difficulty up like Sekiro did in terms of not being totally friendly to new players, even though I'm always about new people joining a series and getting into it, it's just it felt that fragmented with the 3 characters we could control, which I did enjoy, but story wise it felt very boxed in and it didn't involve. It ended up, it was just a slight disappointment from what I was hoping new from a series. Now I can say now that I don't need to play any more Devil May Cry games. I'm okay with the ending, right? And that's the story completed, almost like a Assassin's Creed type of story arc, right? I was kind of done after Desmond was brought in, and then I'm kind of done again. It's just it's a good game though. I'm not gonna lie, it is fun. So there we have it. The final score for Devil May Cry I think was just a bit high. I do consider it a great game though, despite what you may think. I think it definitely is a solid game and worth a pickup if you can go into it as a Devil May Cry fan thinking that this is the last one. I know whatever you might be picturing as a finale, and I know this may not be that. Try to think of it that way, and I think you'll find that it accomplished everything that you would need it to with that kind of frame of mind. Dante and Virgil go into the underworld together, and that kind of being the end of that. So let me know, did you play DMC 5? Longtime fan, newcomer fan, what did you think of the reviews of the game yourself? And check out the reviews of the people we reviewed today, because they are really good. for many reasons. And next up, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.